Well, hello, everybody. Hi. For those of you that don't know, I'm Emily, president of the Crypto Recruiters, and this is Bullish On, the show where we spotlight the people, the companies, and the partnerships we're bullish on in crypto. Today's guest is someone who's been at the forefront of marketing innovation for over 2 decades, launching everything from SiriusXM to immersive Web3 platforms. We are bullish on Gordon Meyer, the former CMO of Cointelegraph and a true digital business builder. So with a career that spans legacy brands and cutting edge startups, Gordon has helped scale subscription businesses to tens of thousands of users, authored and taught a blockchain course at Columbia College, and led marketing at crypto exchanges and AI startups. So today we're going to dive into Gordon's journey. We're going to hear the lessons he's learned leading marketing through bull and bear markets and spotlight our own work working together at his time at Cointelegraph. Gordon, how are you doing, my friend? It's great to see you.
I'm doing good, Emily. Nice to see you.
Yeah. Gordon, we've known each other for, is it 4 years now?
In crypto years, I think it's like 21 years, something like that. But it's sort of an OG. You establish yourself very quickly in the scene, and here in New York, everyone just kind of gets to know everybody else, and you figure out who's good at what. And I know our paths crossed pretty early.
Yeah, I mean, we hired 30 people for you.
Yeah. I mean, in order to scale up an organization quickly, I think that's one of the things where, recruiters do really well, especially a recruiter that knows the scene and can find those needles in haystacks. Absolutely. Your help has been invaluable throughout my career.
We'll dive into that in a little bit. So I want to talk about you, unless you want to do a quick intro on top of the intro that I did.
Oh, I don't think I can top that.
Okay.
I don't think.
So let's dive in, Gordon. I think everybody wants to know, what were some of the biggest marketing challenges you faced stepping into a brand as visible and fast moving as Cointelegraph?
Well, first of all, over at Cointelegraph, at the time that I joined, it was right at the beginning of a pretty big dip in the market. It was a crypto winter. And I think for anybody out there who's watching, you've probably been through a crypto winter before. And, I like to say that, this business is very seasonal. It just doesn't go by a calendar. You can't set your watch to it. Whether the market goes up or down is very, very difficult to predict. And by extension, it's difficult for businesses to predict. So that can affect everything, right? So for me, one of the biggest challenges, frankly, it was crypto winter. And that affects all kinds of things. How interested people are in crypto news takes a dip at the same time, right? As you can imagine. When crypto news is not front page in the New York Times, that's a bellwether right there about whether or not the surrounding crypto media is seeing high traffic or not. So it was that downturn. We were launching a new trading analytic platform right at that time. So right when people were trading less, we launched a new subscription product with crypto analytics. So huge challenge. Again, we also had just the speed of the news cycle, the tribalism in crypto communities, balancing credibility with revenue, right? So we had the news website, but we were also launching a revenue product. And so, for the brand to walk that line was certainly a very big marketing challenge. But, working with a brand like Cointelegraph that already has, such history, so many, great attributes to it. It was wonderful to work there and work with that brand, but yeah, we were able to find, the right audience, certainly for the products that we were launching. We were able to find those, diehard crypto traders. Of course, they're watching Cointelegraph every single day, whether it's on YouTube or the homepage. So we were able to find that audience and really get them in and get them engaged. And I think for a media outlet like Cointelegraph or any media outlet out there, you want, as much as you want readership, you want consistent readership. You want those super fans coming back to you every single day who are voraciously reading your news. It's one of the reasons why you see all the news outlets, with newsletters and finding other ways to get into your stream so they can be more proactive. Certainly the kind of tactics that we were using at Cointelegraph, but great brand. I think they're still doing great out there. They've weathered many, many storms, and I'm sure they'll continue to do that.
So we really enjoyed our time with Cointelegraph. Was so grateful to meet you there and work with you there. Let's talk a little bit about that growth. So, I know, but I want you to tell our audience, and we've got quite a few people here. If anybody's got questions for Gordon, just leave a comment. We'll get him to answer those. But what qualities were you really looking for when hiring those 30 people with us?
Well, first of all, as I was saying before, you have these ups and downs in the market. So there's a lot of turmoil. You also have a startup environment. So for any company, in the Web3 world, for the most part, by definition, you're working at a startup. And so there can be a lot of drama that comes with that. And some of it isn't necessarily driven by the people. It's just the forces at play, right? I mean, might not be high revenue. You have a lot of people involved. Not everybody's getting paid, huge salaries. So there's a lot of like sweat equity. People are hoping for equity in their play. So there can be a lot of drama that happens. So I'm always looking for, first and foremost, no divas. People who have high emotional EQ, right? Somebody who's able to just not get involved into the drama, keep their heads down, do the work, and do the work well. I would say that's one quality. The other would really be Web3 knowledge, of course. But I think, for us, when we were building a whole marketing discipline within the company, recognizing that you don't always need the deep Web3 knowledge, depending on the role. Hiring a graphic designer, I didn't need somebody who knew, the ins and outs of Solana, right? I just needed somebody who was a good designer. So, you don't need Web3 knowledge when it's not essential. For somebody, more front-facing, content creating, content writers, of course, you need the opposite. You need somebody who knows crypto and knows crypto well.
One of the things that I especially loved about working with you was the fact that we were able to give people opportunities to get into Web3. I can't name him, but there's one specific person that we placed under you as a social media manager that now works at Blockworks in a very high level role. So it was this perfect entry. So thank you for being open to people that aren't crypto native. Okay. So what were any hard lessons learned from hiring, like a time when things didn't go as planned?
There's a lot of things that can go wrong after hiring, right? Like, the job role can evolve as the company evolves. I think one specific example I can think of really was just we hired somebody with an incredible resume, but no execution grit. They were great in meetings, great in the interviews, terrible in motion. It taught me to prioritize builders over thinkers in fast moving organizations, especially startups. It's easy to just talk strategy forever, but you need to move into execution. I like to say it's strategy through execution. If you iterate enough, you can get to the strategy. And sometimes that's a better way of working, especially at a startup when you don't have a lot of time and you need to get the results quickly. But yeah, especially when you have smaller teams, those who are not able to ship work and show deliverables on a weekly basis, really day in, day out, it's obvious pretty quickly, and I ask all my direct reports to do a status report on every Friday, and I'll look at, and I force everybody to tell me exactly what was delivered specifically that week, not just what they're working on, but specifically what they delivered. And that list is vital. And if that list is long, that's a good thing. If the list is short, that's not a good thing, so yeah, that was a bad hire. That was a bad hire.
It happens. It happens. The crypto recruiters have a 97% retention rate, but that's still 3% that didn't work out. So it happens. We have a question from our community. Gordon, have you ever worked with remote teams? I know the answer.
Yes, especially in Web3. Yeah. At Cointelegraph, we were all remote. On the exchange, I've been CMO at a crypto exchange, was 100% remote. I was also CMO at a crypto mining, some infrastructure plays, a crypto mining company, for instance, was 100% remote. So yeah, I mean, I gather behind the question, the ins and outs of that and the differences, it's both a good and a bad thing. I definitely, as a manager, I've had some of my most successful conversations just ad hoc, walking up and kind of saying, hey, what are you working on right now? And having those conversations. I think it's those sort of water cooler moments when light bulbs tend to go off. So finding ways to replicate that whenever you can. I, definitely favor having brainstorming sessions. I don't think a lot of people have time to schedule those. I think they're important, where you can ideate as much as you can. But then also, I think, being able to have fun, and I think for remote teams especially, recognizing when people sign off and allowing them to do that. I think that was one thing that was just huge in a recent role. For instance, everybody's so connected, and you even have everyone's phone numbers. You can text them if you want, and especially when you're a global organization, that can bleed into 11 p.m. text messages for people. And for me as a manager, I definitely, with remote teams, do my best to reinforce work-life balance and respect people's offline hours.
I could be better about that. Not with my team, but with my candidates. There's definitely been several 11 p.m. hey, just checking in on you text messages. It's funny. So we have a team of 14 here in the US. We've got a team of 3 in APAC. I don't have APAC cell phone numbers, but everybody in the US is on emergency bypass. So they can call me anytime. My phone will ring 2:00 in the morning. I don't care. You need me to get you an Uber because you were out too late? Fine. That's how I handle my team. So speaking of my team, would you mind if we talked a little bit about your experience working with us and, what made you reach out in the first place besides our relationship?
You can imagine if you're at Cointelegraph and you put a job description out there on the internet, you're just going to get flooded with resumes and how to go through them. I've been around the block, but understanding how to parse through resumes, figure out who's good, who's not. I certainly don't have the time to talk to everybody who submits. And I think one of the things that sort of kept me up at night when we started listing jobs, I had to build an entire department. Cointelegraph didn't have a lot of marketing people when I joined. I was there first. What kept me up at night was the thought that I'm missing the gold. Am I hiring somebody just because the design of their resume or whatever else influenced me? And who am I not speaking to? I have a list of thousands of resumes. How do I bubble up the right ones to actually talk to? And, if you're in a high growth environment, one of the critical skills is learning how to scale yourself. And for me, one of the ways to scale myself is to lean on those who are good at what they do, right? So go to the expert. You need somebody to go through resumes and sift through everybody. You go to the crypto recruiters, right? That's the fastest way from A to B. And it's frankly the most cost-effective way. Because even if there's a fee for that, a recruiter fee, and not every startup wants to pay that, but you'd say, all right, well, what happens if you take your CMO and take them offline for 30 full days while they go and hire? Or worse, I've had to juggle a lot of different things at the same time when I'm expected to hire, and hiring then becomes lower tier. But then the entire company suffers because we're working short-staffed, right? And then you're burning out those staffers that are really good. And I've seen that happen. When hiring takes too long, you're burning out your rock stars. And then there's a danger that they leave the company and you're even worse off. So for whatever the fee is of a recruiter, especially a good one who knows everybody in the industry, in the vertical, that's worth it. That's totally worth it. There's an ROI there. I don't have the math on it, but I know it's there.
So in working with us, how did our process stand out to help you move faster compared to doing it in-house or working with other firms? Why were we your favorite?
Certainly, look, we've never met in person, right? But I feel like you're like a great friend. I don't know how you do it. I don't know that I have that personality, but you that way. So we've had a lot of conversations about how, even you asked it kind of earlier right here is, who are you looking for and why and what kind of person? We had a lot of these back and forth discussions almost on the philosophy of teamwork and what is the dynamics that I'm going after. And so, you really pulled out of me what that vision was for how the department would work. And then you went and found the little puzzle pieces to fit together to make that picture. And I can say with all honesty, I still talk to, a growth marketer that you hired for me over at Cointelegraph. She's doing amazing, but she talks about that time as being really informative in her career. It really gave her a leg up. And I take that as, a compliment for sure. But I also think it was the team dynamic that really settled that in and gave that particular person the ability to shine with their work and spread their wings and fly, so to speak. Not to get too touchy-feely about it, but when you have the right team dynamic, it's palpable, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you think about it like a sports team, right? When you're all playing together and you're all in sync, that's when you win games. And when there's a lot of discord, or you don't know, there's not clear boundaries, you don't know who does what, or you find somebody unreliable or what have you, that's when you lose the game, right? And so I think, again, that goes right back to a good recruiter, because you were deeply plugged in and actually building the entire team, so you could see it from 360 degrees, as opposed to just finding one person to plug into an unknown group.
I like to call us culture creators, because I took your vision of what you were trying to build and just implemented with the right people. So thank you. And your favorite hire, are we talking about Danya?
Yes. Yeah.
She was incredible. She likes all my TikTok videos. It's so sweet of her.
Well, she was a needle in a haystack, because I was looking for somebody who knew a lot about crypto trading, and also like programmatic advertising. And those are two, obviously, it's like, I wanted somebody who knows everything about, hammers and, how to read maps. It's just like two totally different things. And you found her, right? And that was not easy. That's a very detail-oriented job. It doesn't necessarily, it's not a role that's at least at the time, that was super common within Web3, because everyone was doing influencers. People weren't really doing programmatic ads. So I think the industry's evolved. I think there's a little less of the influencer stuff and a little bit more programmatic, but we found her. She was great. She plugged into the team. She had been, a day trader. It was like the dream hire. She was a day trader at home. She knew everything about every single crypto asset. I could plug her right into Cointelegraph, which is like a duck to water, which was great.
Do you know how I found her?
No.
Instagram. I was just scrolling on Instagram, came across her profile. She was talking about crypto Twitter, and I reached out. I don't spend a ton of time on Instagram, but I used to come up with videos, but it was wild. She was a great conversation. I knew she was going to be a great fit. So we've got a couple of other questions, unless you wanted to say something. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I was just going to add too. I think she had come from USA Today. It was like the perfect hire. It was like USA Today, right to crypto news. Amazing.
So we love Danya. And I'm so glad that you were able to give her such a great opportunity. So Antonio has a question that relates to kind of what we talked about yesterday. Breaking into Web3 without having experience. What advice would you give to someone trying to break into marketing in the crypto industry today?
Yeah. First of all, show, don't tell. I mean, one of the ways that I broke in, frankly, really, I was doing a lot of public speaking at the time. I was hyper interested in crypto, and I was investing a lot. I was doing a lot of public speaking, and I started talking about crypto, even though I wasn't really working in it. And luckily, I got approached by Columbia College to author a course, right? And so doing that was really why I'm working in the industry. It's because I could say in an interview, I literally wrote an accredited college course on it, and I taught lectures on the Howey test and how Ethereum works or what have you. Not everybody's going to get that exact opportunity, but I would say show, don't tell, right? You can still, if you're not going to get approached by a college to write a course, you might write a Substack, build a following, get curious. Certainly, I hire for, evidence of curiosity and taste. It doesn't have to specifically show up in the resume of your current job. But if you say, look, I'm working in whatever, the renewable energy field, and I want to get into Web3, but you have a blog and off the side of your desk or on weekends, you're there, or you're attending events and you're going to Crypto Mondays or whatever might be in your local area, and heavily involved and can speak to, whatever the altcoins are in your bag or what you're interested in, right? It's show, don't tell. Mm-hmm. I think that passion should come through if it's genuine.
I think there's a lot of opportunity for non-crypto natives to get into the space. One of the part of his questions was there's not a lot of Web3 talent out there. And I counter that. There's a lot of Web3 marketers out there, but it's all about how they got started. So to Gordon's point, getting involved, meeting people, growing your network, but you've got to position yourself as an expert in the field. right? You want someone to be able to see your content, say they know what they're talking about. I really like this. Maybe we should talk to them, right? My goal is to have someone fall in love with you, reach out to you directly, and just that's it. Okay, so Gordon, if we were working together again, which I'm sure we will, and we were building out a marketing team from scratch, what's the first role you'd need me to recruit for?
It's a tough one. I'd say it's a toss-up. I'll start with content strategist, right? Everything else really, frankly, flows from that. You've got brand voice, narrative arcs, campaign cohesion. It's important to note, too, I think for a lot of startups, working with a lot of CEOs, everything going on with AI right now, there's an assumption that you don't need a writer, right? Is ChatGPT can do it. And I got to say, I don't know if everyone else out there, especially like on LinkedIn, is noticing just the preponderance of like LinkedIn posts that are so clearly written by ChatGPT.
Yeah.
It's becoming pretty obvious when it is. And it's kind of lazy, right? It's all over LinkedIn. It immediately becomes apparent to me. And it's a way of saying like, I'm lazy and I don't respect my audience, And I think that can happen in tech is they think, everybody inside the company thinks they're smarter than their own customers. But don't be lazy. This is not where you want an algorithm to handle your marketing, a content strategist that understands Web3. And really importantly, because you more than often than not, you want to build a community. ChatGPT doesn't build communities. It's a large language model. It can explain things to a 5-year-old. It can't get a group of 5-year-olds to pay attention to you, in the front of the classroom. You know what I mean? And so content strategist. I'd say it's a toss-up, though. The other one that is just so vital for me usually is marketing ops. Because in my opinion, marketing is really sales. It's one-to-many as opposed to one-to-one. Your salesperson's going to get a contract signed with an individual person. Marketing's going to just blanket the world with and build awareness for you and drive those conversations and get that phone to ring. But the marketing ops at the end of the day is the person who's going to score the game. And I don't know if I'm winning or losing unless I'm able to score it, right? And everything from website analytics to how many people are filling out the form on my website. Are my paid campaigns efficient? Are we doing the right things? Even just from a project management standpoint, just somebody who can make sure that the trains are running on time, that everything is neat and orderly, and we're able to score it. Is just so vital. As somebody who leads a department, I say the vision is we go over there. Somebody needs to say, this is exactly the center of the dartboard. Here's the dartboard. And whether or not we hit it bullseye or at least we got close, right? So again, I think marketing ops is pretty vital to any smart marketing company.
I agree with you. I think it's absolutely content strategist and marketing ops, one of the first hires, right? Next to marketing leadership. Gordon, are you open to new opportunities? Just like put you on the spot while we're here.
I would be a fool if Emily, if you and crypto recruiters come to me and say, hey, I got this thing. I know, my resume, my background, you kind of know what kind of environment I like to work in, where I have that sort of autonomy. I'm able to build something new. I like to sink my teeth into a new challenge. I'd be a fool not to entertain whatever that opportunity is. Right.
So I want to show people a little bit about what it's like to interview an executive like you. Can we pretend that I'm a hiring manager and I'll, interview you for head of marketing role at a top Web3 company?
Sure. You're really putting me on the spot, but sure.
I know, I'm sorry, but I want to show people how to nail this kind of a conversation, and on the spot is best, right? Because it's an interview. You never know what's going to happen. Okay. I'm trying to think of a question that I ask my people. Okay. Nope, I don't want to ask that question. So the first question is, how would you excel as head of marketing?
How would I excel as head of marketing? Well, look, I think you get into a little bit of the science of leadership, right? So how do you excel as the head of marketing? And I would assume, this is coming from, a startup. In terms of me and my leadership skills and how I do things, I really do lead with a clear point of view and high expectations, quite frankly. I don't hover over my staff. I give smart people real ownership, and I expect them to move fast.
You do.
To think independently and bring solutions, not problems. I say this almost to the point of like a skipping record, but whatever idea makes the most money is my favorite idea. And I don't care where it comes from. You know what I mean? And I also am famous for saying it's not the Gordon Meyer show, right? It can't be, right? The hive mind always wins. And so if it's just me and my ideas and a team enabling them, the hive mind's going to figure out pretty quickly through the response rates, the hits to your website, whatever it might be, whatever those KPIs you're trying to drive, are going to quickly tell you if you're right or wrong. So that's why, especially in a world where there's A/B testing, I'll take any smart idea from anywhere. So I do like to run a pretty flat organization. I respect the smart people I've hired to do the job that they're hired to do. I expect results. Again, going back to hiring first, somebody who's in marketing ops, I'm going to measure every single role, every single resource on the team, and I expect them to perform. But some of my superpowers, I connect dots that others miss, whether it's between market signals, team dynamics, timing. I spot what's not being said. I name the thing under the rug. I keep the work aligned, and make sure that the ship is sailing steady. I challenge assumptions. I don't believe in any sacred cows, especially in Web3. That's part of why we're in it too, right? Is to challenge the status quo and shake things up. And so I think it's important sometimes to, say the hard things when it needs to be said. All of that being said, I think, I'm not always, down and difficult. I like to lighten the mood. I think high output teams don't need pressure necessarily. They just need clarity and context, frankly. And so I spent 10 years on stage doing comedy in New York City. I think that going back to the earlier question on how to manage remote teams, I think sometimes just some jokes can sort of help. But, bottom line, I run towards the fire. I back my people and I expect results, not chaos, not drama, results. So for me, how do I lead, or what is back to the original question, what is the definition sort of success for somebody who's a leader in marketing? Be providing a vision for where the business is headed and draw a map of how to get from A to B. And if the team buys in on that, I know for certain that we'll get there.
Second question. What's a major marketing win you're most proud of, and how did you achieve it? And this can be crypto or Web 2.
Probably the biggest in my career over, a fair amount of time. I would go back to, I joined Syria, like a satellite radio company, when almost nobody was subscribing yet. Like they had just started. So I was there for 12 years, but when I started, they were in the red. They were hemorrhaging VC cash. My friends all thought I was crazy. They're like, nobody's going to pay for streaming radio. And so I led digital efforts for the company. I did paid programmatic, social, built out the community, and I was able to assemble, an amazing team. I built out an entire, we had a call center from the phones, and I built out like a call center for social media to just handle all the inbounds of, people, whatever, complaining or whatever it might be if they needed help. But I built all of that out. I built even all the way down to the payment gateway so you could buy it on the website. The company went from 100,000 subscribers when I joined to over 35 million when I left. It went from heavily in the red to way in the black. They were publicly listed. The stock went from a nickel to like $10. I mean, the multiple on that was almost as good as Bitcoin, for goodness sakes. It was a long haul. It was 12 years of work, but it became a multi-billion-dollar company. And, as far as, being proud, I think I like to say I joined a startup and I exited a multi-billion-dollar public company. And, once you go through that and what a fun ride that is, you want to go back and ride that again. So I'm always on the lookout for what's the next Sirius Radio, or what's going to be the next, Kraken or Coinbase, or what other Web3 company is out there that's going to be like a household name in 10 years. What an exciting opportunity to be a part of that from the beginning all the way through to, success.
So let's say I'm launching a crypto product, right? Still me, hiring manager. What's your go-to market framework? How would you approach this from day one?
I like to walk it back from success, right? I always start with defining success and then walking backwards. And even as a part of that, like a pre-mortem, right? Instead of the post-mortem, it's thinking ahead of time, and it's like, what could go wrong and how do we prevent that from happening? And usually at the launch, part of what defines success, frankly, is just community, community, community. If you have a strong community, more than likely you're going to be successful. And community can be different if you're B2B or B2C, but let's just say for the sake of example, it's B2C. In other industry verticals, instead of community, you might say, super fans. When I was working in radio, that's what we called them, right? Or if it's consumer packaged goods, it'd be like heavy users of, I used to work on Trident gum, but you learn this in marketing 101. You want to understand your most loyal customers. It's vital to the business, and oftentimes your heavy users of, or your super fans, or your behind the velvet rope community, very often the rule of thumbs is that 20% of your users provide 80% of your revenue. So find them. Again, going back to the definition of success. How do I guarantee revenue? Well, who's driving potentially 80% of the revenue? This small group. If I can coddle a group of super fans and get to that, I've kind of won, So that's, day one, you don't have the community, you need to go out and find them. You need to cultivate them. And frankly, the way to do that really is to under promise and over deliver. And I can't say that, Emily, more strongly enough, because I think it's the opposite in a lot of Web3, is that they over promise and under deliver. I mean, it's why projects fail. It's why tokens, become S coins. I don't know. Can we curse? It's because they overpromise and underdeliver. And so it's vital to, call a duck, but white glove your community, over deliver to them, respond to them. If you can't list the name of 10 of your super fans, and you're a marketer, you failed. You need to know them by name. And if you don't, and if you can't conjure up a single name or a handle on Twitter or whatever, you're not doing it right. I'd say that's the test. And I mean, there's the gotcha question in an interview. If somebody's managing social and you say, who's your number one fan? What's their X handle, or what's their LinkedIn or whatever? If they can't name a single name, they failed, right? Because that means they're not developing relationships.
Right. I agree with you. I will tell you, I find it very difficult to make. Hold on one second. My dog is jealous that she's not on her walk and the other dog is. So give me 1 second. Okay, I just had to yell at her for a second. So yeah, I think sorry, that totally took off my train of thought. But I do think you're right. I think a lot of crypto companies are not following this. I agree with you. They're under delivering and over promising. And that's something that we really kind of sniff out when we're having conversations with leadership team. Like, are they setting accurate expectations? Things like that. So going back to leadership teams, I interviewed you very heavily when we first started working together, but I want to share with the network, or with our network, what is your leadership style when managing creatives, high output teams that are under pressure, like Cointelegraph?
Well, I mean, for me, first of all, I am a bit of a creative, right? I mean, I'm a painter. I have hobbies. I write. I practice art, so I can relate, to the designer. I can relate to the copywriter. I like to think of myself almost like as the junior designer or junior copywriter. I'm not the expert that they are. But the best thing I can do as a manager, frankly, is just shield them from the noise and, set a clear North Star and then let them run, right? Creative teams need autonomy, but also, they need fast, clean feedback loops. And I find with creatives, the most important thing is how the project is delivered. And if it's delivered thoughtfully and carefully with clear definitions, that's how you're going to get success. It's when you lob a project over the fence, and going back to working in a remote first world, with those vague projects, those vague assignments, you're going to get back vague work. So, I think it's incumbent on any manager to really, again, define success, how they're being evaluated, but I also, frankly, I know I'm doing my job when the team feels like suddenly, for whatever reason, the drama or the politics of the company disappear. Like, that's my role. You know what I mean? Yeah. I'm like the noise canceling headphones for my creatives, right? I block out the politics. I block out all the other stuff. I let them focus on doing good creative work and let me deal with other departments and whatever, is going on.
So you're in the weeds. You're there, you're grinding, you're protecting your team, you're doing it all.
Have to. I mean, it comes with the these are the types of things that I like to do. I mean, I'm nerdy like that. I was like an RA in college. I'm always that, the president of the whatever society. I did that throughout my, my childhood, throughout college, and even afterwards. I find myself in these like sort of positions. I guess it's just my superpower, right? But what's really important to me too is arriving at a solution that moves the needle for the world. If I can do that, that's incredibly satisfying. And there's just so many opportunities in Web3 where some of these projects really have an opportunity to alter the way society works for the better, and to be a part of that and help transform society. I mean, I feel like the crypto conversation is, apart from, let's say, AI, it's the center of the tech conversation right now, and to be a part of that and help move the needle within this industry is huge. It's very satisfying.
Antonio has another question. I love the contribution here, and I think this might be Jessica. It never shows up as the real name, but that was a fantastic answer about how to manage. I think it will resonate with a lot of people. And earlier to your hammer comment, Matt, I saw this comment earlier. I was cracking up, but trying to stay like focused. But I love that. So let's go back to Antonio. As everyone goes digital and so overcrowded with digital marketers, is live event field marketing now the new out-of-the-box, eye-catching marketing tactic?
I started out as a media planner at a large global advertising firm. And, right out of college, I was managing huge budgets. I think it was like $35 million. Just suddenly they hand to me and I got to spend it. And one of the things I became a big fan of is finding the white space, like uncluttered environments, right? I mean, if you advertise in a highly cluttered environment, dollar for dollar, penny for penny, in terms of awareness and more importantly, engagement, you're just not going to see it than if you're standing alone. And so how do you find those uncluttered environments? One of the things that was driving me crazy during COVID, for instance, was like, I got no mail. And it's like, how come nobody's using direct mail right now? I mean, right? We're all we're glued to our TVs. Yeah, we're all watching Netflix and everything else, but we're all stuck at home. And no one's entertaining me in the mailbox, because I sure as hell, would go outside to get the mail every single day. And I wasn't getting anything coming in. It boggles my mind. And it's, I brought this up in Web3 too. I'm like, can we consider direct mail? Can we, even if it's like B2B, let's just send, let's send a printed up booklet or a brochure or something like that and get it to an executive's desk. If they're working in an office and they work in TradFi, they have mail, they get mail to their office. They're probably not being spoken to or communicated to from that channel very often, right? So again, going back to the original question, is it events where it's at? Yeah, I think you got to find the right events. I think for me, the real growth opportunity is in those smaller events that not everybody's, clamoring for, and they're a little bit cheaper. They're smaller attendance, but you can probably develop, more business there than trying to wade through, say, Consensus. I mean, I think Consensus is great. I've advocated, sponsoring a Consensus in the past. One of the things the larger groups do is allow you to, let's say, sponsor a stage or a smaller part of the conversation. You always want to look at that, but yeah, anything different than everybody does are there any Web3 radio commercials out there? Have you ever heard one? No. You're on mute.
Actually, I have one. CoinFlip did a radio commercial with, what's that guy's name? It's not Neil deGrasse Tyson. He's a very famous guy. He's in a bunch of movies. He's really goofy. I can't remember his name. What?
Tom Cruise.
I wish. No, it was someone less special.
It's a vague description. Somebody famous who's been in a lot of movies.
It was actually you. But no, I just don't remember who it was.
That's, it's like when you hear it, if it's a communications channel you're not used to being spoken to by a particular vertical or company, when it happens, it's breakthrough, right? That's why, I mean, you think about like Super Bowl ads, right? And there have been some Web3 companies that do it, and it, right? It's always a big deal. It hits the trades. It's because it's novel. I think that if ever I can find, I use the analogy, like if you want to advertise to deer in the woods, like how would you go about doing it, right? And you might just, sort of spray and pray and nail up. Let's say you're advertising like deer food. You might just nail some deer food ads on trees randomly through the woods. But if you want to be smarter about it and spend your money a little bit wiser, if you pay attention, the deer actually make paths in the woods. And if you pay attention to the deer paths, then you might want to put the ad next to that path, right? And if you do that, from the point of view of the deer, you've put ads all over the woods, even though they're, you know what I mean? From their point of view, if they're going on the same paths and they're always seeing your ads, as far as they're concerned, your ads are everywhere, right? Because it's everywhere they are. So think about your audience. Where do they go? What media do they consume? How do they consume it? When do they consume it? And are you there or are you not? And if you're just doing what all your competitors are doing, you're not coming at it with that consumer first, the buyer first mentality. And you have to go back to that always. I think, personas are the kind of things that marketing departments do as a fun little exercise, and then they forget it, print it out, pin it to your wall and keep in mind who that person is, whoever your target audience is. They probably listen to the radio. They probably open their mailbox and get mail. They do other things besides just surf the internet. And yes, you're going to get them on social. Yes, you're going to get them all kinds of ways. But if ever I can find a novel way to do something, heck, I would do skywriting if I thought it worked,
One of my philosophies when building the Crypto Recruiters is I wanted to stand out, but I didn't want to be obnoxious, but I also didn't want to get lost in the crowd. What do you think of the yellow hoodies? I know you've seen them. So what do you think? Is that a tactic that, it works for us because all of our audience is in person at conferences. I had someone ask me, am I going to see a sea of yellow at Consensus? And I was like, most definitely, 100%.
It's funny. I was just on a call earlier today, and we were talking about advertising for this company and what kind of things you can say. And, I was saying, well, you've gotten a lot of awards. Can we showcase that? And they were like, I don't know, isn't that kind of braggy? And you're like, we can get shy, as human beings. It's like, would you walk into the cocktail party and be like, I'm the greatest, whatever, marketer in the world. I just got #1, whatever. But when you're representing a brand and you want to introduce that brand, sometimes building FOMO, the way to do it is to say that you've won awards or you have to distinguish yourself. Mm-hmm. And so, the yellow hoodies, it's like, let yourself stand out. I'm a fan of them. I think, Web3 is too hoodie centered. There needs to be another, tech has the fleece vest. We're not doing fleece vests. Web3 does hoodies and like only hoodies, but I don't know when we're going to graduate. It's sort of like we're at this inflection point in the industry where, the banks are allowed, even here in the United States, the banks can custody crypto. The suits are coming in. I don't know how much longer we have on the hoodies. We'll see.
I've been wearing, at least I'm consistent. I've been wearing yellow suits to the conferences. So if you see a lady in a yellow suit, it's most likely me. So feel free to come up and say hello. Gordon, we're over time by 15 minutes. Thank you so much for your time. I know you've got to go, but any last words that you'd like to leave with our community about you, about us, about crypto marketing, anything?
I'll just say, first of all, Emily, thank you for the opportunity Thank you for pulling me on. It's always fun chatting with you. Thank you to all the people who are watching this. Thank you for the questions. Thank you for engaging. And I would just, give you a word of encouragement. If you're looking to break in, or if you're already in, you'll know that, look, this is a, high risk, high reward industry, right? We're all coming in because Satoshi Nakamoto wrote a paper back in 2009, but this technology is really changing the world. It's shaking up the way people think about money, but it's also far reaching. You can build an entire company on it. You can build an entire country on it. Blockchain as a technology is disrupting so much of our society. It's an incredibly exciting time. And there's just so many projects and companies out there doing amazing things. So the world's your oyster. It's not easy to land that role necessarily. There's a lot of people who want to get into it. But look, if you're smart and if you're tenacious and hardworking, you'll get that role. And definitely if you work with the crypto recruiters, they're gonna coach you on everything from your resume to how to handle an interview. They're gonna do it well. Trust them; they know what they're doing.
We're just here to help. Gordon, thank you so much. I was gonna say I'll see you in New York, but I'm not gonna be in New York. Are you going to Consensus?
I am not going to Consensus this year.
Okay,
but if you ever come to New York,
I will see you next time in New York. Thank you for coming. I'll talk with you later.
Thanks, everybody. Thank